I would just like to start by acknowledging the Bunurong and Bunurong traditional owners of the land where I live and work, and to acknowledge their contribution to the stewardship of the lands of Australia, as all First Nations people of Australia have done for many thousands of years. I'd also like to invite each of you to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands and where you are finding yourself today. Okay. I'd also just like to begin by acknowledging the supporters and sponsors of the Smart Future series. I'm not sure if the slide has been cut off from how you can see it on the screen, but the supporters and sponsors of the Smart Future series include Wellington Shire Council, the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, Gippsland Climate Change Network, the Community Power Hub Latrobe Valley, the Gippsland Smart Specialisation initiative facilitated by Latrobe Valley Authority, Gips Sport, Gips Regional Sports Assembly, the Sports Environment Alliance and Latrobe City Council. So thanks to all of their involvement or contributions for helping to make the Smart Future series possible. I'd also especially like to acknowledge Darren McCubbin and Esther Lloyd for all of the work that they have been doing behind the scenes to help facilitate and bring together this series. All right, we have 4 awesome speakers today. And as I mentioned just there at the very beginning, we have a slightly different format. So we're going to maximise the time, the first hour, to enable each of the presenters to do a fairly solid presentation. And then we have the breakout rooms from 1 p.m. to 1:30. Where when you registered for today's forum, you would have been asked to nominate a breakout room you would like to go into to be able to have more in-depth discussions with one of the presenters. Now, we've also realised that some people might want to change rooms. So at the 1:15 mark, there will be an opportunity to change once. So if you've been able to ask your questions and enjoy the feedback so far or the discussion so far in the breakout room, but would like to explore some topics with another speaker, then at 1:15, Darren will invite you to leave the chat room or breakout room that you're in, return to the main room, and then he will reallocate you to a second breakout room if that's what you want. But by all means, you're able to stay where you are and stay with the discussion. We're trying to minimise the sort of the disruption of people coming and going. So we'll just have one of those opportunities in that half hour of discussions. Okay, I would like to invite John Coulter, our first guest presenter. So John Coulter is from the Energy Innovation Co-operative, and he's speaking on the Southern C.O.R.E Fund today, on how the Southern C.O.R.E Fund, which is a donations and no interest loan model, how that can support financing of community energy projects. So John, are you able to pop your slideshow up? I'll stop sharing and you can pop your slideshow up.
Okay, hopefully that's up there now, everybody.
Yep,
afternoon, everybody.
That's all good. Thanks, John. I'll hand over to you.
Okay, great. So afternoon, everyone. So the 2 parts to the Southern C.O.R.E Fund that I was going to try to cover today. The first and the main one that I'll talk about in this part now is how the fund was established and the financing mechanisms we used. The second is part 2 is after the fund's established, how it's administered, how you get the maximum benefit across the community, what sort of legal documents are required and where to get them. But I'll leave that part to the breakout group. So Co-op, Energy Innovation Co-op's been going since 2009, running workshops, bulk buys, promoting renewable energy. We've got 300, we're a non-trading cooperative with 300 shareholder members, volunteer board of directors, part-time project manager. I know the Prime Minister isn't really a member, but he's welcome to join if he discovers renewable energy. In 2017, the C.O.R.E Fund was created to help local community groups with energy efficiency and installing renewable energy. And the obvious question for any community fund which is what we're all talking about today, is where does the money come from? Anywhere you can get it might be the answer, beg, steal or borrow, because the benefits to the community groups are really significant. In the co-op's case, we didn't steal or borrow, but we did beg, sort of. We got a grant in the round 2 of the NEJF fund. And fingers crossed for anybody listening who's putting in a grant for the round 5, which closes tomorrow. May you all have opportunities like this in the future. So one of the things that helped get the CORE fund up and running, this was before our New Energy Jobs Fund grant, was some early community donations and especially support from the Bass Coast Community Foundation. They could see the ongoing community benefit that a revolving fund would provide, and their startup funding was really important because it gave us the cash co-contribution that was required by the NEJF and that's required by many of the funding bodies. It also demonstrated the community support we had for the project and would have enabled us to explore other community investment options if we didn't get the grant, which was our preferred position. These early donations also meant that we could start making no interest loans even before the new energy project was up and running. And then some of the promotional work that we did on these early loans triggered other donations from community members. This put some pressure on to develop our eligibility and administrative processes and loan agreements for the fund. And it was also about that time that we got DGR, or deductible gift recipient status, for the fund too. This is frequently a requirement for grant bodies or for philanthropic funds, and makes it easier for people to make donations. So we had our early donations, our NEJF grant money. We had our host site, which was the state coal mine in Montague. All we needed now was a lease, a power purchase agreement with Parks Vic, and we'd be on our way, or so we thought. But negotiating anything legal with a large statutory authority can have its challenges. This was no different. We discovered in 2017 that PPA really stood for a potentially painful assignment rather than a power purchase agreement. But fortunately, there were other community groups out there who came to the rescue, some of whom you'll hear from later on. One was the Community Solar Alliance. This is a collection of similar renewable energy groups. The legal templates they were developing proved incredibly useful at the time, and it was the draft power purchase agreement template that we used to model our power purchase agreement on. Another important thing for us was obtaining pro bono legal advice, because this was a fairly complex project. Hopefully other ones will be a lot simpler. They could see the community benefit from the project, that we were a not-for-profit, and provided a lot of help. Because we had the Solar Alliance legal templates as a starting point, we weren't reinventing the wheel, and being able to bounce legal documents back and forth between Pricewaterhouse and Parks Vic saved us thousands of dollars that we would have had to try to find somewhere. Our power purchase agreement was a behind the meter model. This requires that the host site, which is Parks Vic, still has to purchase electricity through a registered retailer. It also required the co-op to register and obtain a retailer exemption from the Essential Services Commission. Sounds complicated, but it wasn't too hard. It can be applied for online. There's a special category for community groups and power purchase agreements, which is wonderful. There's also some ongoing obligations with this. For example, that you can't charge more than the default offer. There's information about the exemption requirements on their website. And some of the officers in the department there were also very helpful when we had a few tricky questions to answer. Since flicking the switch in April last year, the power purchase agreement income has provided income into the CORE fund and helped fund a number of our community projects. This was at Granville Recreation Reserve. Part of this was in kind, part of it was a council grant, and some of it was DELP funded as well. This was in kind support for the Phillip Island Learning Centre, which was a Pick My Project grant. Bass Rec Reserve was a $15,000 loan. It was actually to replace their roof so that they could install solar panels rather than for the panels themselves. And our most recent one was an $11,000 loan to the Artist Resource resource collective at Yanar. We've got a number of other projects in the pipeline that we're considering at the moment, depending on funding. So to finish up, these are a few of the issues that we've encountered along the way. We're still trying to build the fund. We lend out the funds we have as quickly as possible for the widest community benefit. And it's very exciting when the first loan we made is fully repaid, which it was this month from Foster Outdoor Pool. I can go into more detail in the breakout rooms later and answer questions and things then. So that's it for me, and back to you, Moragh.
Thanks, John. Thank you very much. So we will go on now to, just trying to share my screen again. Sorry, a bit clunky. Operating two screens. We'll go on to our second guest presenter now. So just clarifying too, sorry, I'll just go back. I think I neglected to introduce myself, which is nice of me. So Moragh MacKay, I'm the New Energy Projects Manager currently at the Latrobe Valley Authority, and have had something to do with most of the guest speakers who are online today. Hence, I'm the session facilitator. And Dan Cowdell is our next speaker from Geelong Sustainability Group's community-owned solar financing projects. Now, Dan's had a long history with the Geelong Sustainability Group and project managed the major project that he's going to be talking about today. But he's also talking about how the financing model that they set up is replicable for both. They will be using it again and again, and he's also willing to share how they develop that model with other sustainability groups or community energy groups that might want to adopt that model also. So if I can just invite Dan for you to be able to share your screen now and go into your presentation. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Moragh. Let's see if we can get the technology working. Can you see that now? Great. Okay. So afternoon all. So as Moragh sort of pointed out, I've been involved with Geelong Sustainability now for a number of years, and primarily driving our community-owned renewable energy task group. I'll tell you a little bit more about the group, but essentially what I was going to focus on in the next 10 minutes or so is our Core Geelong 1 project, which is a community initiative. It's over 500 solar panels that are completely owned by community investors and installed at a local aged care centre, and just how that project's come about and the sort of mechanisms that we've used to make it all happen. So a little bit about us. We're a not-for-profit community association that's been running since 2017. We've got over 2,000 supporters, and each year the group just seems to become more and more active down this way, which is really great. We're a registered charity, and really work off that old phrase from Margaret Mead around, never doubt that a small group of citizens can really change the world. So really love that quote. Some of the activities we're involved in, I don't think that page is actually coming up properly, but is a range of different community events where we provide sustainability education to various around various subjects and so on. We run sustainable house day each year down here in Geelong, and then of course the community-owned renewable energy task force project, which I'll speak to. We've also just launched a social enterprise, which is around providing sustainability services more broadly to local businesses in the Geelong and Barwon region. Now, Moragh, I'm having a bit of a technical challenge here, so I'll try and reshare this screen to see if we can get it going again.
Okay, no worries, Dan.
My presentation just froze there in the middle.
If it continues to be an issue, maybe we could swap to one of the other speakers while you see if you can resolve that.
Yeah. Let me just, I'll try and just reshare now and see if we can get that happening.
Okay.
Yeah, really sorry everyone. I'm not sure what has happened there. I'll just, hopefully you
That's
can all
come through.
see in this format.
Yep.
So just a little bit about how our first core project came about. We actually started with a donation project like a lot of other community groups, which was to put solar on a local school in South Geelong, and that was just very much rattling the tin for small donations. We raised $13,000 overall, but we were really pleased with the outcome because it was able to install just under a 10 kilowatt system on the school and be able to provide a sort of ongoing dividend back to the community where the school would reinvest the savings back into sustainability education. So we're really wrapped with that outcome. But through that project, we realised that it was a little bit challenging to actually get the funding coming. We found that a lot of people were more interested in having some sort of return on their investment. And I'm terribly sorry, Moragh, this slides are just not coming up, so I might try and fix my IT issues if you like. Is that the best way to perhaps come back to this? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We you know, these are they're not insurmountable issues. We just have to adapt. So no worries, Dan. Robin, are you ready to go? Would you be able to jump in now and go into your presentation, and we'll come back to Dan afterwards? Is that okay?
For sure. Yeah, more than happy to. More than happy to. And look, thanks for the introduction at the beginning. Thanks for attending, everybody here. I'm really interested to kind of share a little bit of background and experience with raising funds for, well, not always community projects, but definitely energy focused businesses. So let me just share my screen here just to provide you with, okay. So if I go over here, I really want to go back a couple of screens, and that's perfect. All right, can everybody see the first page?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, fantastic. So just to introduce myself and introduce Birchal. Birchal is an equity crowdfunding platform which actually started, we started work back in 2017, but the legislation for equity crowdfunding didn't get passed until 2018. You can probably hear from my accent, I'm not Australian. I actually came over from the UK where I previously worked in equity crowdfunding and in this space for a number of years. So I was really interested to come back here or come over here rather and start from the ground up and start in the same industry, because equity crowdfunding for so many businesses is such an exciting space to be in. And I think that it can really apply to so many businesses, especially in regional areas of Australia, but also where so many people are aligned with the same vision for what they really want to achieve in the business itself. So I'm going to really be focusing on equity crowdfunding for an energy focused business. So the cover, really just covering what I want to kind of project to you guys today. I'm really interested to just compare equity crowdfunding to traditional funding models. And I appreciate that they might not apply to absolutely everybody, but I'm going to try and make it as applicable as possible to anybody out there who's actually got a business, who is looking to raise funds for that business, and really use some case studies and examples here. I'll show you exactly what we've achieved so far, as well as refer to those case studies, and then go over the Birchal process and how it all works, and really how you can most effectively not only raise funds for your business, but also grow at the same time. So when we look at equity crowdfunding on a whole, compared to traditional funding, whereby you kind of build up an IM per se, and you actually go and start to circulate it around a number of different people. The very biggest difference between equity crowdfunding compared to traditional funding is that with equity crowdfunding, you can market the offer, and that means that you can bring on retail investors and you can bring on wholesale investors as well. So when it comes to the two different models, wholesale investors actually can only, they can invest in both, but when it comes to a deal that isn't equity crowdfunded, retail investors don't get an opportunity to own part of that business. And when it actually comes to something which is very community driven and everybody is really interested in seeing that business grow and wants to be a part of it, it's actually a really good option to be able to open it up to retail investors who, you know, probably can only invest anywhere from $100 to $1,000, but they really want to be able to own part of that business. Then because of that aspect, it's very widely marketed. So you can get a lot of exposure for the capital raise itself compared with the traditional put together an IM and you send it out to your big list. Now, because of the two different approaches here, you've got a corporate culture whereby you're focused on financials and focused on what the growth trajectory of the business looks like and what the financial forecasts look like. Whereas with equity crowdfunding, we find that that does matter, but actually your story and what your vision for the business is matters somewhat even more because of the fact that you are trying to win over the hearts and minds of the everyday Australians who are coming in and becoming community shareholders in your business. And through the regime that you've got, you'll find that these terms are set, and before you open up an investment offer, you actually set the terms, so you don't have to negotiate the terms throughout the whole process of raising capital. And that can really help save you a lot of time in the process of raising funds for your business. Now, taking a look at all the offers that we've actually managed to close, we've now successfully closed 42 offers, collectively raising over $24 million. At the end of 2019, this was representing around about a 59% market share. And we've got near enough 45,000 members on our database who we circulate every offer to. Now, if I look at some case studies in this market, I'm just pulling a number of examples which are really, well, they're energy businesses and they're focused on growth in certain areas of the energy sector. And so what we're looking at really is a number of businesses who have all respectively built up strong communities and gone out to those communities and tried to raise funds. And all of them have done it a slightly different way. Red Grid was actually very unique in the way that they built up their community and then went out and really had a hugely successful offer. As you can see, that green bar actually represents that they hit their maximum target. Now, DC Power Co. is a business that some people might have heard of already. They had one of the largest equity crowdfunded offers in the world before they ended up coming to us to then raise funds for their second round. But they had a huge, huge community of people who are all very engaged in seeing the business grow. And so equity crowdfunding is a natural route for them to go and raise funds. Indigo Power, I'm going to break this one down a bit more in a case study because of the fact that it, I think, really represents what a community-owned regional business can look like when it is going through an equity crowdfunding round. And then Capricorn Power was a very interesting business. They came to us with not a lot of traction from a commercial perspective, but they'd focused so much on their IP of their product. And so they came to us and actually raised funds very successfully within their own community. And we helped them really ramp up their social activity and grow their social presence and get them some press. So therefore, they ended up having a really successful round, managing to raise just over 300K. So if I flip over to the next slide here, breaking down Indigo Power. Now, this is a campaign which is opened and closed successfully in Q2, which is during the pandemic. And Indigo Power, I actually sat down with Ben, who's one of the founders of Indigo Power, and we talked through every aspect of what made this campaign so successful, because they raised 300K in just over 4 days, which is actually matching the previous record of hitting a maximum target of 300K in such a quick time. But they have always been community driven. They're a regional focused energy company, and they really want people who are regionally focused to be able to support them. And as a result, what better way to have your customers come on board and actually buy from you than have them be invested into your company? If they're invested into your company, then there's every chance that they're going to become a customer further down the line, because at the end of the day, they want you to be successful. So they'd been talking about it for a long, long time, and they'd been really teasing out what it was that made people want to invest into the business from an early stage. So, you know, when they were talking and growing their community, they were always focused on the idea that they really wanted to give everybody the opportunity to actually invest into the business itself. And because it was regional, they managed to actually gain some significant local press, and that put them on the map. And that really helped gain exposure to other people who might be considering switching their energy providers and can see that there's a local business there. So there was a lot of different aspects which really helped with Indigo Power, and it was a hugely successful raise. Okay, so breaking down the process, if a company wants to come and look to raise a small amount of capital or even a large amount of capital at this stage, the process itself takes the same amount of time. It's typically 10 to 12 weeks. It does vary a little bit, completely depending on what stage you're at and really how developed your business is. But in the pre-launch stage, this is where you're developing a company profile, putting together some of the right type of content, and also developing a press strategy and developing a marketing strategy to go out there and really ramp up activity and get talking to everybody you possibly can about your capital raise. Then you want to really run an expression of interest campaign, which effectively is a list building exercise. And in every single successful campaign, the EOI has been instrumental to determining what minimum and maximum targets should be set, and really where the company is going to be sitting at in terms of its success factor, its success rate rather. So it's always very important for a company to consider exactly what what their minimum and maximum targets can be, and that's why we run an EOI. And at that same stage where you're running an expression of interest campaign, there is an offer document and a few other legal matters to discuss and confirm. And the offer document can be considered a condensed down version of a prospectus, which companies prepare when they launch an IPO. But this is not quite as arduous or not quite as detailed. So it's, can't be seen as such a big piece of work. But then you go on to launch the live offer. And this is the really fun part, where you can convert all the expressions of interest that you've got to your investment offer, and hopefully, obviously, reach your maximum target like Indigo Power and Redgrid did. Now, in that stage of going through and raising funds for a community energy project, you've really got to be across the marketing for what you're looking to do as a business. Because if you're not building a community first, then you have to be building it through the raise itself, and that can be really costly, and it can be obviously it can take a lot more time because you're trying to educate people. So I would always encourage anybody who, if you're looking to go down this route, you've got to start building a community first. And this is going to come through the likes of social media and a bit of digital advertising if you have the budget for it, and really building it in an email list. So when it comes to social media, I'll break that down a little bit more on the next slide. Digital advertising is a factor which really can help ramp up your activity in terms of conversions, and it's something that we use incredibly effectively throughout the process for raising funds through equity crowdfunding, because we can advertise, like I mentioned before. But if you're not building up an email list for your business, you're actually missing out on everybody who's coming to your website and everybody who's landing there and might be really interested in actually owning shares in your business in the future. So like I said, the episode which I sat down with Ben from Indigo Power, he mentioned he was building a community from the very get-go of the business itself, and was always talking about the idea of people coming on board as investors. And if you haven't already got on the map from a press standpoint, I'd highly encourage you to do so. and try to reach out to some local journalists who do write stories about your projects, and start to build a list and think about the story that you can pitch out to them. Now, when it comes to social media, yes, this is not going to be applicable for absolutely everybody, and it's not going to make complete sense for every business. In fact, I'd say I speak to 50% of businesses who actually have no strategy for building any of this up. And it doesn't make sense for them to do so because they're just focused on building IP for their own business. But let me tell you, if you're not doing any of it, then you are really missing out on a lot of organic growth across so many different platforms, which can really just help identify even large investors for you. Heck, I mean, when I was back in the UK, there was a cycling company which I worked for, who the company sent out a tweet and they ended up gaining 130K investment on their campaign. That's really rare, but it definitely happened, and it's huge. It can benefit you in a huge way if you do start to really build your community and start to really share your message of what you're looking to do, because at the end of the day, it's free and you need to be able to take advantage of that. And when it comes to taking advantage of organic growth and platforms, I would highly recommend that something like TikTok is something you cannot ignore at the moment, because people are starting and they're already getting thousands of followers in a very short period of time, with just some really engaging content. So that's a really good way you can start to engage your community. Then when it comes to all of this, I'd say that every single successful campaign has actually been incredibly successful because of the fact that they've gone out and developed the right content. So these examples to the right of you, these are companies which have developed the right content, and at every possible stage, they've got in front of the camera and just shot some video content. If you're not doing it, you're missing out because of the fact that the algorithms on these social platforms won't push your content, and they'll make it more expensive for you to actually produce conversions, which ultimately will lead to investment. And when it comes to your project, if you're considering going down this path, your story is everything, and the clarity in which you message that and communicate that story is everything. So I'd highly encourage everybody to really start to consider any of this if you are thinking equity crowdfunding might be for you. And obviously, when you're doing that, you really want your engagement to be strong, and your social proofing and traction has to be there. Thanks very much, everybody, for kind of tuning in and listening to a bit more in depth about equity crowdfunding. As mentioned at the start, there's going to be some break rooms at the end, so I will be in one of those to answer any questions in relation to equity crowdfunding, and we'll hopefully be able to apply it to your business and your situation. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Robin. That was really wonderful. And I'm in your breakout room, so I'm really looking forward to hearing a bit more detail about how to go about setting up for one of these investment projects.
Great.
Okay, we've got Dan back online, so we're going to switch back to Dan. He has a different style of presentation. Hopefully this one is going to work, and Dan, we'll just have a shortened, just a 10-minute presentation now. Looks like that's working beautifully. So let's get back into Dan's presentation with no more wasting time. Awesome.
Thanks, Moragh. Take two. So I've reverted back to a PDF. I'm not sure what was happening with my PowerPoint, but there's some pictures of the events that we have been running down in Geelong. Now, I really wanted to sort of speak to the model, but again, here's a few of the photos there from our crowdfunding project at South Geelong Primary School. So we found it a little bit difficult doing the donation-based, and came up with the idea based on what a lot of other groups, community energy groups, were doing, you know, the likes of Repower Shoalhaven, Clear Sky Solar and so forth, and wanted to develop up a model where we could have the community investors, you know, funding local solar projects that would enable us to purchase a solar system, put it on a business's roof, so that business gets the benefit of solar for no upfront cost, and reduces their electricity bills. But of course, we didn't want to sort of give that away for nothing. So it's really was about creating a win-win where the local business can win, the community investors can get a return on their investment, and we've achieved our purpose as well of getting more renewable energy out there. So for us, the project really started with trying to find host sites, and we engaged with a lot of different organisations, but eventually came across this really great aged care centre called Max. It's multicultural aged care, and they're a bit unique. They've got this piazza and do all these amazing sustainability initiatives. So it was a really good fit for us for a first project, and we really thought that it could be a very positive one. You know, a first for a Victorian group doing a community investment model, and really great returns for everyone involved, and of course the sustainability benefits. This is the sort of, I guess, how it works structure, and I'll be going into this in a little bit more detail in the breakout sessions, but to undertake the project, we actually started up a new entity called C.O.R.E Geelong 1, and there's various legal arrangements and agreements that we had to put into place, and we were lucky enough to be funded through the state government's New Energy Jobs Fund to actually develop this project, and we also did benefit from the Victorian Community Solar Alliance project, the toolkit project of various legal documents. So we utilised a couple of those in this project. I'll talk to that rather than boring everyone about it now in the breakout room. So we launched the project. It was sort of felt like an overnight success, but we'd been working at it pretty hard for over a period of 18 months or so, and we were able to raise $150,000 in 7 days. We were really blown away by that solid response from the community, and the model that we chose meant that we were capped at 20 investors. So for this project, each of the 20 investors put in $7,500, and that enabled us to install the solar system at Max. There's a bit of a photo of it there. So it's 156 kilowatts. It's actually 2 separate solar systems across a couple of meters, but very visible location. And for us wanting to really show some community leadership, it's a great visible project. Now, again, in the breakout session, I'll talk a little bit more, but what we've developed through the process of this project is a quite significant amount of learning and knowledge, and I think every community group needs to do the work and due diligence on that themselves. But rather than everyone having to recreate the wheel, we've been able to put together a bit of a pack of the resources which we've developed, which we're willing to share with like-minded community energy groups as well. So if any of you are from other energy groups around the region, please reach out if you're thinking of doing a similar project. Really happy to share those documents and the learnings that we've had around that. And I'll go into detail about exactly what's in there in the breakout session. But for us now, all that work for the first project, we're looking to replicate that and have a C.O.R.E Geelong 2 and 3 and 4, etc., where we can just sort of reuse all of the documentation which we've done and agreements and so on. We actually found in the course of our project, we received expressions of interest from over 100 people wanting to be part of it. Invest in the project, but we were capped at 20. So we know there's really significant local interest in supporting another project. And for us, if anything, the difficulty has been around engaging other host sites. So finding sites where the solar is actually, where they're an ideal candidate for solar, high daytime usage, and also not paying the right amount, I suppose, for energy is the way to put it. So if they're on a really cheap tariff, very, very low, we struggle to make the community benefit sharing work, where it's giving a return for investors and a return for the host site. So we found in engaging with lots of sites that there has to be a few criteria that sort of line up. But we certainly think that aged care is a sector that we want to look at quite heavily, and think that's a really good target for these sorts of community projects. So we're working pretty hard now on C.O.R.E Geelong 2, and we hope to be able to launch something in the next 12 months, so our second community crowdfunder. And I guess just before I wrap up, just really what else our team is doing, just for interest, we're looking at pathways for setting up a community-owned solar farm in the region. So that would be our next huge step. And we're also working quite collaboratively with a network of Barwon region energy groups called Brace, and that's spawning all sorts of great ideas and lots of projects that are more regionally focused right across the region. Okay, I think that's it from me, Morag. I'll leave all the detail for the breakout room.
Thanks, Dan. That's really awesome. I'm not sure if people here today with us have picked up, but what we've actually got is each of the presenters are speaking to different scales of projects. So obviously the Southern C.O.R.E Fund is really set up for facilitating small scale energy projects that can be facilitated through no interest loans and donations. So most of the projects that are coming there, and that's not to say it's limited to this, but most of the projects that are coming there are projects on community halls, sporting facilities, and other community, small community facilities. Then the Geelong Sustainability Group is a step up to we're working with a special purpose vehicle company set up with 20 beneficial investors, and a much larger scale, over 100 kilowatts of solar and battery storage, that sort of mid-scale community energy project. Then Birchal's equity crowdfunding platform can facilitate clearly much larger scale and the open investment, like more than 20 beneficial investors style project. And then our last presenter today, Aaron Yu, is from Oxamii's People's Grid Energy Marketplace. And they're not so much an investment raising platform as such, but they can help. They are an innovative retailer, and their model can underpin the business case for community energy projects. So I'll hand over to Aaron now to explain what that means in practice, and I'll come back to you after Aaron's presentation. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Morag, for that. I'll just start our presentation. So yeah, like Morag said, we're not a financing platform, but rather we're an energy marketplace, and so what that does is allow community groups to actually build projects and be able to sell to the community. So just quickly about myself, my name is Aaron Yu, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Oxamii. And I wanted to start with our vision, because that's really important for us. It's global sustainable energy, one community at a time. And for us, communities are at the heart of what we're doing. And we believe renewable energy, has become cheaper and accessible to communities. And so there's an opportunity to localize our energy and enable those benefits to accrue back to the communities. One of the questions, I sort of ask myself is, why don't we see more community energy projects? Community energy has been talked about for a long time, and we're seeing examples all over the place, from community retailers, solar bulk buys. We're seeing isolated sort of wind and solar farm projects built by community groups, and even the example previously, selling behind the meter. And so, my take on that is, there's a real need for community energy. One of the problems is the energy market's really, really complicated. And, what we do need is a business model that puts all of the parts of the electricity market into one easy place. At the moment, from my perspective, it seems like, community energy projects are all trying to do things in isolation, and they're building projects, themselves, basically trying to reinvent the wheel. And so when I look at the energy market, the first part that I see as a stumbling block is electricity retailers. If you build a community energy project, let's just say it's a solar farm, someone's going to have to buy that electricity. And there's really two options. The first being you can sell it into the wholesale market, which isn't ideal because the price is variable. Sometimes you get negative pricing. And so really the second option is a power purchase agreement. Most of the larger utilities have a power purchase agreement, which is an agreement to buy that output from a retailer. And these projects are normally large utility scale projects that retailers buy from, not small community projects. So that's quite hard to put a community energy project into place with a retailer. The second problem is that most electricity retailers don't accommodate in their billing system a way where customers can buy directly from a generator. Their systems don't allow it. They basically pull their electricity together and then just sell it on price. And so, my hope with Oxamii, which I'll explain a bit further, is to make it as easy as possible for community groups to identify and be able to build a project and then find a customer. We standardize all of the complicated agreements, and we've built all of that sort of infrastructure, which I'm going to talk about, to make it easy to build projects. And so really, for us, community energy is about the community. Without the community, there's really no community energy. And so what we need is for, the benefits to accrue back to the communities. And so, for us, there needs to be an easy way, to build a project, a simple way for customers to sign up to that project, and then also a really simple way in partnership with an electricity retailer to buy from that project. And so if that could happen, if there was a way that, individuals, so households and small businesses could buy directly from a project, what that would mean is that, the project becomes viable, and in our model and our partners, it would be easy to fund. And that's really what our solution is. We built this energy marketplace called the People's Grid, which is an online energy marketplace connecting, generators directly to customers that want to buy green energy from their local communities. Now, we have launched a proof of concept in South Australia early in January, and we're actually now live with real customers and a solar farm that they're buying their electricity from. And for us, this is really the test case to start community energy and the ability to buy local energy through a retailer. And I'll quickly sort of explain, the three core parts of the technology of the platform. Firstly, there's an energy marketplace, which essentially just allows, customers to know who they're buying their electricity from. So they want to buy from the community. The second part is developing, some core technology around billing that allows the generator to sell their output from the solar farm to a customer at a set price. Now, without a decentralized billing engine, you can't have decentralized energy, which leads to the third part, which is the matching algorithm. And so we've developed a matching algorithm that uses customers' energy consumption, and we match that with the generator's output using their smart meter data. And so what that does is it allows solar farms to be able to trade, or even anyone. So you know, a behind the meter customer to be able to trade customers to their neighbour or to their communities. And so, you know, how this works, you know, I think the best way to show is a you know, a test case, and like Moragh sort of said, you know, this is a way for you know, the community or the generator to get funded. So we're not a financing platform. So we're happy to work with all different types of funding and community groups. But I'll just sort of quickly show what we're doing. So we've partnered with a local electricity retailer called Energy Locals. Now, Energy Locals holds the retail license and the compliance. Oxamii has developed the platform called the People's Grid, and we provide those matching and billing services. Now, for this example, I'm demonstrating it with a tennis club, and so the tennis club has community members, and so there's an ability for that tennis club to create a community affiliate program, and that would be buying from a local generator in the community. And so the tennis club has household members, and if those household members can sign up through the tennis club's affiliate program, buying from that local generator, what this does is it enables the solar farm to get paid, but most importantly, what it does, it also allows the tennis club to receive revenue from those households that are buying from that generator. And so for us, this affiliate program is a way for community groups to be able to set up, you know, a project and buy directly from renewable energy in the community. And so simply by signing up, they're earning revenue there. And then also we can encourage businesses to sign up under that affiliate program as well, and sort of act almost like a sponsorship. So I can talk about this a little bit more in the breakout room, but essentially what this enables is if community groups are buying from local generators, what this means is that the generator can be easily funded. And so we've partnered with a fund called Climate Capital, which is an impact fund who invest in social causes backed by family offices. And so they fund small scale solar farms in the communities, but what they really need is a way, or what they need is communities to be buying that electricity from the generators in the communities. And so with our platform, the People's Grid, we can enable this. So Moragh, I'll sort of finish the presentation there, and yeah, if anyone has any sort of questions in the breakout rooms, happy to sort of talk about this further.
Hi everyone. So I sincerely hope that that the session today has been a really valuable one for everybody. I really appreciate the time taken by each of our guest presenters to do their presentations and then go into the discussion rooms. We had a wonderful discussion in the Birchal room about how, you know, just what's involved in setting up companies that can do the crowd equity funding. So I think Heidi and I and the other participants in that room are a little more conscious of how we might support any community energy groups that want to go down that path. If anyone has got further questions of each of the presenters, I understand that those presenters are all happy to have their contact details shared so that you'll be able to follow up with any further questions. And of course, the presentations will be made available. The main presentations today were all recorded and will be made available on the Smart Futures website. Part 5, the Community Energy for Sporting Clubs, is the next of the Smart Futures series. That's going to be on July 1st. And we have presentations from the Sale Tennis Club, the Yanar Solar Footpath Recreation Reserve, and the Gippsland Regional Aquatic Centre. And the Regional Aquatic Centre is using geothermal heating, so that will be interesting just from a technology perspective, but also how that project has got up and running. After that, the last in the series, part 6, is on home energy solutions, and that's on 15th of July. If you would like to know more about each of these sessions, that information for part 5, Esther will have up on the website either later today or tomorrow, if you want to go there and have a look and register for the next session. And hopefully we'll be seeing you all then.